listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. It's Halloween, a holiday that's been associated with broomsticks and black hats, but there's also a bunch of creators popping off on socials all year round, working extra hard to sell you their spells, potions, and the answers to your future.
A lot of newspaper articles always say, since when has everyone become a witch? Oh, it's obviously because society's, going crazy and people need something to cling on to. That's really not correct. It's been surging since the 50s.
That deep dive into the quote-unquote rise of the modern-day witch is coming up in the second half of this episode. First, though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It's Friday, the 31st of October.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. Search efforts have been renewed for missing South Australian 4-year-old Gus Lamont, who disappeared from his family's sheep station nearly 5 weeks ago. Today, police will return to the remote property in the town near Yunta, northeast of Adelaide, to drain a large dam about 600 metres from the homestead. The 4.5-metre dam has been searched by divers already. However, authorities say areas with underwater vegetation are more difficult to fully scan and rule out.
Draining the dam will give police a chance to carry out a more comprehensive search and then hopefully rule it out as a possibility if Gus isn't found. South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas says police are working tirelessly for answers.
I know that South Australian police are throwing everything at this. There's no stone they're not looking under. And I just wish the police every success and continue to think of Gus and his family.
To date, there's been extensive air, drone and land searches for Gus by hundreds of police, defence personnel and volunteers to no avail. In the weeks since he's gone missing, authorities haven't even found a trace of the 4-year-old. However, police are still ruling out foul play, saying there's been no evidence to suggest any human interference.
Thousands of prison guards across one Aussie state have been ordered to return to work today after a mass walkout sent all 13,000 public prisoners into lockdown. Yesterday's snap strike of more than 5,000 New South Wales Correctional Service employees was triggered after a magistrate decided a prisoner who violently bashed 4 guards at a centre in the state's Hunter region back in February would not receive additional prison time for the assault and was instead handed a 3-year community corrections order. A union rep yesterday telling media all 4 officers required hospitalisation.
2 of those officers will never work again.
That was Union Representative Stuart Little speaking there.
Now, the walkout began in Cessnock where the unprovoked attacks happened, then Bathurst, before all union members across the state's 34 public prisons joined in, leaving some correctional centres that usually have around 50 to 60 staff operating with as little as 6, which an opposition spokesperson dubbed
a recipe for absolute disaster in a prison environment.
An urgent Industrial Relations Commission hearing ended in a ruling in the state's favour, with the Commission yesterday ordering the more than 5,000 union staff back to work by 6 a.m. this morning after the strike left the state's court system scrambling with not enough officers to transport inmates to their hearings.
Yeah, and since this story has broke, Tara, former prison officers have been speaking to the media about what it's like working in New South Wales State Prison specifically. One told News.com that it runs deeper than what they saw in Cessnock, with guards often outnumbered and at risk of constant violence, even in some extreme situations being placed into hours-long hostage situations by inmates.
ARIA-Award-winning musician Dean Lewis has issued a public apology after multiple women came forward accusing him of inappropriate behaviour with female fans on social media. In a lengthy statement posted to Instagram last night, the 38-year-old apologised for the, quote, incredible mess and hurt he's caused, saying he will undergo intense therapy to shift his approach to dating, relationships and showing greater respect to the women in his life.
His statement comes after a wave of female fans went viral on TikTok this week for sharing recordings of private phone calls and sext they say left them feeling hurt or uncomfortable. Lewis maintains he has not acted illegally and that his sexual or intimate relationships over the past decade have been with consenting adults, also disputing what he called fabricated accounts in some videos that he acted inappropriately with underage fans. He also says he will be introducing a new set of rules around engaging with fans and responding to messages in the future, hoping to re-earn the trust of those he's hurt and to do better by those he's disappointed.
5 new suspects have been arrested over the $156 million Louvre crown jewel heist in Paris.
Oh, that's crazy, Tara. I just feel like there's something missing from here that I can't quite put my finger on.
Much better, thank you. Now, on Saturday, 2 men were arrested, one just outside of the city and another at an airport attempting to fly to Algeria. The pair were later charged with criminal conspiracy and theft, with police saying they've since partially admitted to taking part in the crime. Prosecutor Laure Bacall says authorities had the main suspect in their sights quite soon after the robbery, managing to catch him via his DNA left at the scene.
Yes, and police say he was one of the 4 men who carried out the brazen daylight robbery, which saw them break into the first floor of the Louvre's Apollo Gallery to steal the 19th century gems linked to the Second French Empire. It included a sapphire set belonging to 2 queens that had over 1,000 diamonds, as well as several pieces worn by empresses, the wives of Napoleon I and Napoleon III. There you go, there were multiple Napoleons. According to police, raids were carried out on Wednesday across Paris, with investigators not ruling out the possibility of a mastermind ordering the theft while not physically taking part on the day.
6-7.
If that sounded like absolute gibberish to you, don't worry, you are not alone. But way to feel old, because this is officially the word of the year according to dictionary.com.
6-7.
6-7. Here I was not even knowing that this was a trend, Chris, clearly over 30, but apparently 6-7 has become a viral sensation among school kids on social media this year.
Yes, and hilariously, even dictionary.com couldn't say with confidence what it exactly means, because it doesn't look to really mean anything at all, which makes it more fun for these kids. It can only be traced back, though, to a song called Doot Doot by a US rapper.
6-7, I just bit right on the highway.
And even that rapper, Skrilla, the artist behind it, says it doesn't mean all that much.
It just represents my brain, like what comes up in my head. 6-7.
Nonetheless, it's become an internet sensation, featured on a recent South Park episode, even made it into Australian politics, with Vic Premier Jacinta Allen mentioning it at a press conference and Senator Fatima Payman in Parliament.
Oh, and 6-7.
Oh my gosh, I just can't with some of these words, Chris. I honestly feel old. I think this is how our parents must feel. I realise, like, we've always had slang, but they just lost me. Kids have lost me at skibbity toilet, Riz, aura farming, and now this.
I love aura farming.
I mean, they do call it brain rot slang, so I feel like that's the only thing that actually makes sense of all of this to me.
Yeah, I feel like when we came out with lit and stuff like that, like it still kind of made sense. You were like, oh, lit makes sense. 6-7, again, for those who even after all that are still confused, it genuinely means nothing, and you can use it in every single context possible. So for example,
the hand gesture as well that goes with it.
Yeah, you got to like pretend you're shrugging, but also like your Lady Justice weighing up stuff. Anyway, do a Google. I don't know if I did that description justice, but guys, go out there into the week using 6-7 and all this knowledge, I guess.
I refuse.
Now that is it for our headlines for today and for this week. It's Halloween, so we thought we'd give you something a little different today. Today, it's Helen Smith's deep dive, looking into the rise of, well, the quote-unquote rise of the modern-day witch, what's fueling it, what's behind it, and how to spot it. Stick around, that deep dive is coming up for you next.
My pretty, and your little dog too.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here with you. It's Halloween, so let's talk about witches. They've re-entered the mainstream through the powers of social media. The rise of Etsy and DIY witches have reinvented modern-day witchcraft.
To me, tarot is a tool to help me use my intuition and connect with people deeply so that they can take the right next steps for them.
But with so many witches entering your TikTok feed or feeding you your future through a screen, how do we know if what they're selling is magic or marketing? Dr Caroline Tully is a scholar of modern pagan religions. Dr Caroline, what does a modern-day witch look like?
Well, that term is now so broad. It covers such a broad range of practitioners. It's hard to say what a modern day witch looks like exactly, but you might find them using objects, rearranging objects in a magical situation that is intended to cause change in the real world.
And can you explain briefly what Wicca is?
Okay, Wicca is used in two ways. It originally comes from Old English and means male witch and was pronounced witcher, but contemporary witches pronounce it Wicca, and it covers both male and female witches. And Wicca technically is it's like a mystery religion. It's a system of initiation into greater mysteries within a particular type of modern witchcraft. So they have 3 degrees, first, second and third degree, and you learn more things and you get greater responsibility, and it's usually a group situation. So the higher degree you are, the more likely you are to run a group. So that's British traditional Wicca. It's quite hard to get into in Australia, but because it's so hard to get into, people just couldn't be bothered waiting, and they're like, you know what, I don't have time to wait for this. I'm going to do this myself.
And how does someone become a witch or practice witchcraft? You mentioned before that you might see someone moving around objects, or potentially you might come across someone who is a witch on your social media feed.
So there are several ways. So, for example, you might come from a family that always practiced magic. For example, Kerry Culkin's up in the Dandenongs, who used to be a Melbourne personality and had a shop. She's from what's called a family tradition. And that's just, your family has always used magical techniques. And also, of course, magic wasn't always considered witchcraft. In pre-industrial times, people had to do magic at home for healing and things like that. There is the initiatory tradition where you will find a British, or sometimes not British, sometimes from other regions, type of secret organisation that you apply for membership in, and you may or may not be accepted, and then you'll learn through them. And then there is what I call DIY, which is where you usually learn from books, or now a lot of videos on the internet, until really probably after 2010 and the real boom in social media witchcraft. So, of course, social media existed before that, but there's a real definition where people stopped looking at hard copy books and magazines and started to look at videos and Instagram and things like that to get their knowledge about witchcraft. And that's really where the boom in selling witchcraft came.
And how do we know if you're visiting a witch or you have a spell? How do you know if it's legit?
Well, that's the thing. That's right. I guess the thing is what you want, did it happen? So it doesn't really matter what their technique is or who agrees about what the best system is or the most effective system. If what you wanted happens, that should be enough. Doesn't really matter how it happened, because the thing is, magic is not something that you wallow in. Magic is a technique to get to something else. It's to cause change in accordance with your will. What do you want? I want this to happen. I'm going to cause change to make that happen, whether that's through a ritual or whether that's through manipulating life in general and opportunities. The result is the most important thing, and it's just about success. Did it work?
So what has been the biggest drivers of witchcraft and witches coming back into the mainstream?
Okay, well, it's been going on for about 70 years since the repeal of the Witchcraft Act in about 1951 in England. Wiccans were already gathering from the late 1930s into the 40s. They were quite secretive and they didn't really start being public until after it was safe to do so. One of the reasons for its popularity is it's got a feminist aspect, so women have a powerful position in it, whereas in, say, monotheistic religions such as Christianity, women are very low status. They certainly can't be priests. They can be nuns and things like that, and they're generally, sort of considered to be kind of negative figures, like, Eve, it's all her fault that, man now has to die, and live on earth in pain and things like that. So it has a feminist aspect. It has a nature aspect. So I think it makes people feel like they're in control. They don't need a priest from one of the big monotheistic religions to tell them or to intercede with them to, the gods. They can be their own priest and priestess. it's kind of taking religion into your own hands, but also it's quite a realistic religion. A lot of people, when they come to neo-pagan witchcraft, they go, oh my God, this just makes sense. This is really sensible because it's earth-based. It's based in reality. It's based in the physical earth and sky. It's not based on some sort of heaven that exists in a different dimension that's much better than here and we can't wait to get there and that sort of thing.
So you mentioned their religion. Is witchcraft seen as a religion?
Well, again, that's another big division. So Wicca is a religion, practical witchcraft that might be sold on the internet. If they use gods to help power their spell, that would be classified as religious. Magic itself is a subcategory of religion. And many DIY witches, even if they don't sort of, say, adopt a whole pantheon of gods, they'll usually have a favourite god, like Hecate, who's the ancient Greco-Roman goddess of magic, is a very popular god. Lilith, who was a Mesopotamian demon, but she was sort of reinterpreted over the centuries until, now she's considered to be quite like, sort of a feminist figure. So she was Adam's first wife in the Garden of Eden. Yeah, it is a religion. It is a religion because it's using invisible forces. And again, I guess some people could say it was a science using forces that we actually don't understand or can measure. But then, how do we know if that's true unless we actually do measure them? So, working on the assumption that there's this force called magic that you can wield for good or ill.
And when do we see surges in practices like astrology and witchcraft?
Well, a lot of newspaper articles always say, since when has everyone become a witch? Oh, it's obviously because society's, going crazy and people need something to cling on to. That's really not correct. It's been surging since the 50s and it's just been getting bigger and bigger. And I don't really think people are turning to it, in times of political or social madness any more than at other times.
And speaking of surges and what we've been seeing in news articles, we've been seeing recently a lot of talk about Etsy witches. What are Etsy witches?
Okay, Etsy witches are, again, the type of commercial witches that sell a service. So they might sell, divination like tarot reading, or they might sell magical products, or they might sell, magical services. So it's just someone that sells witchcraft paraphernalia or services.
What are some of the kind of spells that people are asking of Etsy witches?
The thing is, what I find weird about asking Etsy witches to do anything is, why don't you just learn it yourself? I mean, it's not that hard. And I'm astonished. I am astonished that people pay for these spells. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, just do it yourself. So love spells are very popular. People love that. Love spells. So a lot of these internet witches, they'll actually show photos of the spell in process. But if you know about spell technology, you know that you actually need to really concentrate. And how can you concentrate if you're having to take a photo in the middle of the spell and then post it on social media? I mean, it's irrelevant to the spell. If the spell is about getting attention on social media, yeah, that's relevant. Post it on social media. So, I mean, how would you know if someone did the spell? Sure, they might send a photo of something that looks like a spell, but, are you qualified to judge if that's even material that could be used for a spell? There's a big relationship between the magical practitioner and the materials and tools that they use. And how does the person who is paying for this know that this is actually the case?
Yeah, are there any parallels between the ancient ritual practices that witches would do and the modern witchcraft revival? Like, what are the main differences that we're seeing now?
There are techniques from the ancient world that are still used today. So, for example, a wax poppet. A poppet is like a doll that you would stick pins in, or maybe you'd be really nice to it. So, and it symbolises a person that you're trying to control through magic. What's confusing is that a lot of what is called witchcraft now is really ancient paganism, and paganism was not ever witchcraft. So there were witches in the ancient world, and some people Basically, they don't really know about history that much, so they just, kind of read books or watch videos by contemporary practitioners who also might not know about history. You don't have to use historical techniques. There's basically historical components in contemporary witchcraft, and there's also modern components.
So if someone wanted to go to a witch or visit a witch or find a witch, how should they go about it?
I would seek out personal recommendations from people that would know. So, people often call out these things on social media. Anywhere they're on Facebook, they're like, oh, I want to find a witch to do a spell for this reason. And people might pop up with who they think would be a good person for that. But certainly it is not hard to find, thousands and thousands of people selling witchcraft on the internet just with a simple search.
Dr. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
You're welcome. I always love to talk about witchcraft.
That was Dr. Caroline Tully speaking with me there. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go though, while you're there, if you could subscribe or follow wherever you're listening from, it's really one of the easiest ways you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.